Today's episode is sponsored by Designer Stone. Give your landscaping a personalized touch with a custom engraved stone from designerstone.com. Personalized name, address, and garden decor stones made just for you. They also make the perfect Christmas gift for that person on your list that has everything. As a limited time deal for our listeners, use code GARDEN at checkout to receive 20% off and free shipping. That's designerstone.com and use the code GARDEN to receive 20% off and free shipping.
Starting seeds, staking tomatoes, planting a pollinator garden, or transforming your backyard into a private oasis takes hard work, know-how, and a passion for plants. Unlike most of you guys, I'm always looking for trustworthy advice as well as tips and techniques to make my gardens even better. That's why I know you'll love becoming a member of our growing online gardening community called All Access. The folks here at Fine Gardening are always adding new videos, planting plans, regional expertise, and our hugely popular new project guides, which are all for members only, because every gardener wants to become better at the craft they love. Learn more at finegardening.com/all access. Hello and welcome to another episode of Let's Argue About Plants, the podcast for people who love plants.
But not always the same ones. I'm Carol Collins. I'm the associate editor at Fine Gardening Magazine.
And I'm Danielle Sherry. I'm the executive editor here at FG. And today's topic is, we'll get right into it, Carol, is upgraded classics. We kind of went back and forth trying to describe this to each other to figure out, okay, what's going on here? But basically, a plant that you love might have room for a teeny tiny bit of improvement. And then there's some upgrade that's made to that plant. And that improvement has improved its habit, its flowers, help me out, Carol. What else could be improved on a plant?
It's size.
Oh yeah, size. Yes, yeah. Exactly. I took a peek at your list for, if you can't fit that monstrous plant into your smaller garden, here's a dwarf version instead. So I think it's important at the top for us to say we're not dissing the classic plant, and it's not saying don't throw out all of these classic plants.
Right. It's like, if you like this, you're going to love this other thing that's a lot like it. Right?
Yeah.
That's kind of how I thought about it. Yeah.
Like it, love it, basically.
Yeah.
All right. So give me your first like it or your first classic, Carol.
So my first classic is variegated Weigela. And that's Weigela Florida variegata. And it's a very sweet classic garden plant. It's zones 4 to 8, gets 4 to 6 feet tall and wide, and a nice, mounded habit. Adds a little brightness because of the variegation. It has sweet little pink flowers in the late spring, early summer. And those are nice. They really give you a sense of the shape of the plant because they sort of pack the stems. They have this long arching stems, and you'll see the flowers all lined up. So it looks really sweet in flower. Just a nice, useful, all around kind of plant. It likes full sun to partial shade, moist to average, well-drained soil. Doesn't love to dry out. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a great plant. A few years back, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 years back, we got this sweet little thing. It's my Monet Weigela, and that's another Weigela Florida selection. The botanical name is Verwig. Verwig, yes. And it's hardy zones 4 to 6. So I get the impression that this is a plant that the upgrade just doesn't love extreme heat.
Okay.
It can definitely take a Connecticut summer as hot as it gets here. I've never had a problem with it. It hasn't burned, even though I don't give it extra water. But I think this is probably not a plant that you're going to be able to use if you're in the deep south.
Mm-hmm.
The classic variegated Weigela might be better. But the size is what really makes this special. It's really little. It's 12 to 18 inches tall. And it can get 24 to 30 inches wide. So it sort of like, flows along the ground, and it's got really beautiful like ivory variegation that if it gets a little bit more sun, it gets the pink tinge.
Mm-hmm.
Has those same pink trumpet shaped flowers. It's like super cute because, it's so small and it's got these little flowers on it. But then later in the season, especially with more sun, you still get that pink color, which is nice. And that's an upgrade I would say, from the classic variegated Weigela. It's just that, I love the size because you could use it instead of like a coleus to bring some brightness into a, partially shaded bed, or you could stick it in a foundation plant and it's never going to get too big or take over the space. So
I feel like there was this trend, for a while, and I think it's probably still going on. We're lucky enough to get some nice plant samples every so often. Keep those plant samples coming, companies. But we get to try out these, and the trend lately has been, let me take a monster shrub or a shrub that gets really, really large and let me downsize it. And I think, we've all batted around, oh, do they do that because it makes it easier to ship? Do they do that? But, honestly, it's kind of nice. And in a lot of these cases, they're downsizing hydrangeas. They're downsizing, you were just talking about my Monet Weigelia, that it's kind of nice. Sometimes you just don't have a space for a 3x3, a 4x4, a 10x10 shrub. And this almost sounds ground cover like.
You could. I think it would look great if you massed it together, and and it would you could add a splash of brightness into a bed with it.
That's so good. I'm as we were talking, I'm secretly, privately cracking up a little bit because my first job when I was 13, 14 years old, I worked at a nursery and I worked in the farm department, and the boss there was an elderly gentleman who was this amazing grower, but he always called Weigelia Wiglia. So every time I hear somebody say Weigelia, I just start cracking up because I think, oh, Wiglia, that classic Wiglia plant. But I've noticed too, I have some variegated Weigelia. I don't know what it is. I stuck it in the far reaches of my property. It's actually down by the mailbox. But the thing that I've noticed is hummingbirds go absolutely bananas when this thing flowers because it's those trumpet flowers. Not red, pink. This one is a pink flowering, very light pink flowering. But yeah, it's a big hummingbird plant too.
Yeah, and I think butterflies too. Mine is so little, I didn't see any pollinators of any.
So maybe that's one up on the classic. Maybe that's one up, just one. That's awesome. Yeah. So that's say it again. It's my Monet.
My Monet Weigela, and
Nice.
It's a Weigela Florida.
Nice. Well, so I went it's interesting that you picked a shrub. I picked a tree. I feel like my list might be very woodies heavy, but that's just how I roll over here. My classic plant is a tree that I say is a tree that always pleases. There's very few trees that I say really shine in every single season, spring, summer, fall, and winter. But Persian ironwood, which is Parodia persica, is a tree that always pleases. This is a tree, if you don't know Parodia or Paradia, it is a small tree. We're talking 20, 25 feet tall and wide. Sometimes even people classify it, if it's a multi-stem, as a large shrub instead of a small tree. But this is such a cool tree. It gets this exfoliating bark that looks almost camouflaged with tans and silvers, and it starts exfoliating at a very young age. So, it's not like a Stewartia tree where you wait 20 years before you start to see any of that exfoliation. And then in late winter, early spring, kind of forgets that it's a Persian ironwood tree. It thinks it's a red bud because it starts blooming this reddish purple bloom, spider-like flower that comes right out of the branch tips, kind of like the red bud, which will bloom along the bark. So that's in, early spring, late winter. We've got the exfoliating bark. Summer is really where it kind of lets you down a little bit. It's just pretty much a nondescript. The new foliage comes out kind of flushed and purple, but then eventually fades to a typical green leaf. And then in fall, this thing lights on fire. I feel like its Latin name is Paradia or Parodia, and it looks like a tropical parrot. You get red and yellow and all this crazy orange in between. Looks like it lit up on fire. I didn't think it could get any better than that tree until I was on a shopping adventure at everyone's favorite nursery here in Connecticut, Broken Arrow, and I saw lamplighter Persian ironwood, which is Parodia persica lamplighter. Zones 5 to 9. Straight Paradia is supposedly hardy to zone 4. So, if you're in zone 4, this new upgrade isn't for you. But I'll just get straight to the point. It's the leaves. It has all the same traits as the standard classic Paradia or Persian ironwood, but it's got variegated leaves and intensely variegated. A lightish green, kind of a grayish green with irregular splashes of creamy white all over the leaves. Just beautiful. From afar at first, I thought it was a wolf eyes Kusa dogwood. That's how variegated it was. And then I took a look and I was like, oh my goodness. So this lamplighter Persian ironwood is 20 by 20 again. I tend to think it's slower growing from what I've read about it. Like I said, this is a relatively new plant to me. Full sun to partial shade, moist to average soil, so it doesn't really need anything too crazy. Gets those same spider-like purple flowers in late winter, early spring. Now, in case I know everybody realizes this, but then there's no leaves on the tree. So those flowers really stand out. Same tricolor exfoliating bark. The fall color is where things change up a little bit. If variegated Kusa dogwoods versus regular Kusa dogwoods, the coloring is different, but it's still intense. Instead, this lamplighter ironwood flushes purple and pink and gives you a little bit of burgundy at the end before it drops its leaves. So it's kind of a different fall coloring. But I just love it. Paradias are not hard to grow. They're in the witch hazel family. So if that gives you any idea, witch hazels are pretty tough and beefy. So it's it's definitely one that what an upgrade. So that's lamplighter Persian ironwood, and that's Paradia persica lamplighter. And that's zones 5 to 9, 4 to 8, in that range.
Yeah, it sounds very, very cool.
It is. So Carol, do you have any, I'm gonna make you do a plant maybe that you didn't have on cue, but do you have any perennials on your list? I can always count on you for some perennials.
I do have perennials on my list. Do you want me to do a perennial next?
Yeah.
All right. So my classic plant for this one is Walker's Low Catmint, but really any of the catmints would fit the bill for a classic plant. It's like, that's such a great group of plants, very useful, hardy, zones 4 to 8. This Walker's Low is a Nepeta racemosa, and it gets 2 to 2.5 feet tall, 2.5 to 3 feet wide. I don't know. That sounds like a lie to me because I've got this mass of it.
That sounds like a lie to me too.
I know, right? It gets big. It rambles. Like I've got something that's probably like 10 feet wide and, even longer stretch. And there are 3 plants in there. So, but like for covering ground, a very useful plant, likes full sun. It'll take partial shade. dry to average, well-drained soil. It doesn't seem to mind how crappy the soil is where I have it. It's in my hill strip, like right out next to the stop sign. So it's long blooming. It goes from like April to October here, pest and deer resistant. And it doesn't really seem to have any insect pests, but the pollinators absolutely love it. And it keeps the bumblebees going, from spring until frost. So it's a great all-around plant, but it is kind of spready. And if you don't have that kind of room, there is an upgrade, and it has an upgraded cute name. It's called Kitten Around Catmint.
All right, we got to give it to them, because we kill these companies with these silly names that they do, but that one's good. That is a good upgraded name as well.
It is Kitten Around. So that's hardy. It says zones 3 to 8, so possibly a little bit hardier than the Walker's Low. It gets 12 to 14 inches tall and 20 to 22 inches wide. It stays in a nice, compact, neat little mound. So I could imagine if you wanted the same effect of covering a lot of ground, you could pack these together and it would look great. But I think it would be a very different look, like a nice, tidy little masses rather than a big sprawling mass like the usual catmints. But yeah, really, other than the hardiness, all the same attributes, just in a cute little package.
That's so, I can envision it kind of massed together, but then it's almost, it's these little tuffets almost that are, kind of along the edge of a stone wall. And I'm assuming, because it's in the catmint family, lean soil, same as Walker's Low, a very forgiving plant as well.
Yeah, so I have one of these, and this is out near the other stop sign at the other end of the lot. And it's still going, end of season. It still looks almost as good as when I put it in, and it really didn't get too big.
That's okay. I'm going to have to try that. There was this series for a while. I don't know what I got. I feel like I got another kitten like upgraded dwarf version of Nepeta, but I don't think it was Kitten Around. I Cat's Meow or something like that. That was a bit smaller, but not as small as what you were just describing. So I like that one is tight and compact, because whatever this other one, maybe it was Cat's Meow, Cat's Pajamas, something like that, isn't as big as Walker's Low, but it's kind of in the middle there. And I put it in a spot where it needs to be tinier. So I think I need Kitten Around instead of Cat's Pajamas or whatever it was. Well, it comes as no shock, but my plant is a woody. My next plant is a woody. But I went the native route. I am obsessed with Mahonias. I think it was, my first trip out west almost 15 years ago for the magazine, when I was out in Washington State, and, came across a plethora of different Mahonias that they have out there. There's, I think, 4 or 5 different native Mahonias throughout North America. One of those is holly-leaved Mahonia, which is Mahonia Aquifolium. Now, everybody hold on to your hats, okay? It is also known as Berberis Aquifolium. Now, please don't send us emails and nasty hate mail because we're talking about a Berberis, a barberry. They're changing these plant names all the time. This is a native plant, people, okay? It is not a bad barberry. It's a Mahonia, and it's zones 5 to 8. It's most of the northern west coast, it's native to, and then up and through the northern plains, you'll still find it as well. This is an awesome plant. The first thing that I noticed is, oh gosh, it's evergreen. It looks like these, holly-like leaves on a smaller shrub that gets to be about 4 to 5 feet tall and wide. It's got the spikes all along the leaves, these crunchy leaves. So immediately, dang, I'm thinking, yes, it is deer proof. It is rabbit proof. There is nothing that's touching this thing. And typical holly-leaved Mahonia has clusters of, they're kind of blobous, irregular clusters of yellow flowers in winter. So that's another bonus. They're slightly fragrant. They're kind of hidden in and amongst this, 5x5 blobby shrub. But it's a really nice plant. It's beautiful. It is zones 5 to 8, I think I mentioned. Now, this next plant, I'm pushing the limits of zonal busting over here, but my upgrade is Charity Mahonia, which is Mahonia ex media Charity. And this is zones 6B to 7 up to zone 9. So this is one that likes it a little warmer. Let's be honest, I'm probably a zone 5B because of my elevation. I'm listed as a solid 6. So, this is one that, gosh, I'm lucky is still alive in my garden, but I have it in a tiny microclimate where it's protected in the winter. I was inspired to get this plant by a friend of mine in Connecticut. She's a nursery owner, and she had planted it, and it's stunning. It's absolutely stunning. So it has a more defined shape, Charity Mahonia. It is more upright. It is tiered in those dark green evergreen leaves, so you kind of get almost a pagoda-like shape to the plant. It's a little bit bigger. Eventually it's supposed to get 8 to 10 feet tall and wide, so we're knocking on the door of small tree here. But aside from the more defined shape, the flowers are incredible. They appear all at the top of the shrub like a giant starburst. So you get these almost long racemes of yellow, teeny tiny flowers that are all along stems, but they're arranged in this radius at the top of the plant. So it literally looks like, a little kid drew a golden sun on the top of this plant. It's beautiful. Very fragrant. Eventually, and it blooms in winter, as always, blooms in winter here in Connecticut as well. So we're talking, January, February is when it blooms. And those flowers give way to grape-like looking fruit, which is its other common name is Oregon grape. Mahonias get that common name of Oregon grape. The berries turn purplish. The birds go bananas over them. But luckily, nothing else really touches this plant. I would say, like with most broadleaf evergreens, the one thing I have noticed is winter burn. So, if you've got it in an exposed area where it's, getting those northerly winds during the winter, when it's already, struggling for moisture, it can be an issue and you can get some burn. But unlike, a boxwood or a rhododendron, it bounces back pretty quickly from that winter burn. You just kind of prune it away the next spring and it pushes new growth pretty steadily. But so that's Charity Mahonia, and it's Mahonia ex media Charity in zone 6B to 9. If you're Danielle, push it into zone 5 and see what happens.
Is it fragrant? Are the flowers fragrant?
It is, and I find it to be a little bit more fragrant than the straight speed than holly-leaf Mahonia, which is Mahonia Aquifolium. Definitely got some fragrance to it, which is a nice bonus in the winter.
Oh yeah, that's great.
All right. So because we're talking about 2 plants, basically this whole episode, we decided to limit our numbers here. So we're going to do our last plant now, and drum roll, please. What do you got, Carol?
I've got an annual.
Oh,
I know. I know. It's like the opposite of a woody.
It really is. All right, go ahead.
All right. So the classic is Langsdorf flowering tobacco. That's Nicosiana Langsdorffia, and it's an annual for us, but evidently in zones 10 to 11, it's like a weak perennial, like not a long-lived perennial.
Who the heck lives in 10 and 11? I mean, is that Florida?
Maybe Hawaii. So when we moved to Hawaii, then we
right.
can, grow this
I'm
as a
just being
perennial.
Yeah, I'm just being bitter of those people who, winter is like 85, a balmy 85 degrees. All right. So
Right?
yes, Nicosiana Langsdorffia.
Yes. And so this is a nice sort of medium-sized plant, gets 2 to 3 feet tall, maybe 1.5 feet wide. Um, It likes full sun. It'll take some partial shade, but I think it flowers best in full sun. Rich, moist, well-drained garden soil. It's a Brazilian species that was introduced to horticulture a long time ago, like 1819, and people are still growing it all over the world. It's got this central stem that rises up from a basal rosette of those like classic tobacco leaves. So it's like a big bold leaves at the base, and then it sends up these airy stems with chartreuse or apple green flowers.
Cool.
And they have like that, classic flowering tobacco, sort of a trumpet shape with a flared end. This one isn't quite as star-shaped as some of the others. It's got like little rounded petals, but still the 5 petals like your classic Nicosianas. It's a pretty plant and pretty easy to grow from seed. But this past year, I found a new color. So the upgrade is Bronze Queen flowering tobacco. It is a selection of the Langsdorf flowering tobacco. Same size, same conditions, grow it from seed. And the flowers are this incredible, like chocolatey, bronzy, a little bit of red in it. I think of it like the real red velvet cake, not the kind with a ton of food coloring, but the kind that, the color came from chocolate and some kind of kitchen magic. It's a really neat color, and it reads like a neutral. When you put it with any other color, it just blends in. It makes reds look more red. It goes great with blues. And in the garden, in the vase, it makes a pretty good cut flower, but it doesn't last a terribly long time, maybe 5 days or something like that.
That's still pretty good. 5 days in the
Pretty
vase.
good, right? So, commercial flower growers probably won't grow it for a cut flower, but at home, it works great. It doesn't have much scent. The straight species is pollinated by hummingbirds. And so, as you can imagine, hummingbirds like this one too, but it doesn't have the scent that would draw in the other pollinators. If you want to grow it from seed, I recommend starting it sort of the same time as your tomatoes for like 8 weeks, 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost. Because the main thing is it'll give you earlier flowers. But even if you start it right in the garden, you probably start getting flowers August or so, like end of summer. But starting it inside will give you a bit of a jump. The only thing I would say is that the seed is super, super, super tiny. So, you have to really spread it out, and then you probably do have to thin. So if you get 100 seeds, you're not going to get 100 plants.
Yeah.
And
I always think of Nicosiana as not being very demanding as far as soil fertility, unlike a lot of cut flowers that I feel like need to sometimes grow in straight compost. Is that true, or am I making that up?
No, I think it's pretty adaptable. And, like maybe if it's in leaner soil, it might not quite flower as much. But my experience, and again, this is out in the like sort of Hell Strip area this year, and it had no problems at all and absolutely no supplemental water except when I put it in, like when I transplanted the seedlings. But it flowered like crazy for the first part of the summer. It took a little break in August when it was super hot, but then it's picked right back up, and it'll flower right up until frost.
That sounds so cool. Yeah. And what a bonus with an annual that also has very cool foliage, because those basal rosettes, those huge, giant, almost comfrey like leaves down at the bottom are just really It's a cool plant. It's just a cool plant all the way around. However, I will say, even though I like margaritas very much as a cocktail, that greenish margarita color sometimes in the garden can be hard to work with. So I like that you threw it out there that there's this bronze queen. That just sounds delectable. Maybe that's because you compared it to velvet cake and I'm hungry, but that sounds so good. Love it. All right. Well, so I'm going to end on a perennial because, I felt like I had to. But I'm going to mix it up. I'm going to do more of a classic for a classic. And I went for a classic plant that I think everybody knows. And, but I've struggled a lot with growing over the years. And instead I'm throwing out a classic that I think is which is an upgrade. So a classic for a classic. The plant that I really want to grow and be able to grow is Bull's Golden Sedge, which is Caraxylata aurea, zones 5 to 9. I feel like it has become a classic probably over the last 10 years or so. You see it a lot in botanic gardens and even a lot of private gardens that I've been lucky enough to visit. It's the typical sedge, so it's partial to full shade. The more sun that you put this one in, it gets more golden blades to it. I know sedges aren't technically ornamental grasses, but for this discussion, we're going to call it an ornamental grass because that's what it is. They're basically ornamental grasses for the shade. This isn't a big grass either, which is kind of nice. It gets 1 to 1.5 feet tall and wide. However, I have tried with this plant so many times in my one shady area. You can imagine how great it is to get that golden glow in a shady spot. It is the color that I feel I need, but it's just one of those plants that I planted the first year. It looks great. The second year, it comes back about half of what it was the year before. And by the third year, this thing is like, my old math teacher in algebra where it's trying to sprout out of a bald head, just like 2 little hairs here or there. I mean, it's pitiful. I end up with 3 blades and that's about it. And I yank it. I think it's a winter hardiness issue for me. I think it does not like winter wet. I've also noticed, maybe the second or third time I tried with this plant, it heaves itself. It's susceptible to frost heave, which, in our climate, you can't plant a plant that's susceptible to frost heave. So, I want to love it, but I can't love it. So, the classic that I'm trading in the classic for is all gold, Hackneycloa, which is all gold Japanese forest grass. That's Hackneycloa macra, all gold, zones 5 to 9. I think everybody knows Japanese forest grass. If you don't know this particular variety, it is a stunning golden, almost bamboo-like appearance to it. It has a waterfall of blade-like foliage that's beautiful, just, dripping over the edge of a garden bed or a stone wall. Takes the same conditions as that sedge. It likes full to partial shade. Generally, Japanese forest grass you can push into a bit more sun than a sedge. It's not going to burn out as readily as a sedge is. So I think that there's more of adaptability possibilities with this all gold Japanese forest grass. Same height, 1 to 1.5, maybe 2 feet tall and wide. Just a better habit. More winter hardy. And that's the big thing for me. No frost heave issues, no, it comes back with a few scant sprouts by year 3. It's a solid performer. It is a solid performer. So, and the cool thing I also have noticed with a lot of my forest grass actually, but more the variegated or the all gold, they get a flush of color in fall too. We're recording right now in fall, and looking outside, I'm starting to get a little bit of, pink and a little flourish of purple edge on my forest grasses, and all gold being one of them. And they just look beautiful. So I think if you can get a little, added bonus at the very end of the year, all the better. So I cheated and I did a classic for a classic, but that upgrade I feel is all gold Japanese forest grass. It's a solid performer. And now, because everything sounds better with a British accent, here's Peter to talk about upgrades.
Who doesn't appreciate an upgrade? You'll certainly never hear me complaining about a better seat on an airplane. Take it from a gentleman who is on the taller side. More legroom on a transatlantic flight is never a bad thing. Complimentary tea and biscuits at 42,000 feet? Yes, please. The new Tiger Sport 660 Triumph motorcycle over its less peppy predecessor, the Trident 600? Again, another excellent upgrade. And not that I know anything about that one firsthand. My wife has absolutely forbidden me from driving vehicles that only have two wheels. But as Carol and Danielle recently reminded me, sometimes upgrades aren't all that wonderful. With plants, for instance, the new option is sometimes unproven, and as a result, many an unsuspecting gardener is burned by a variety that isn't reliably hardy or doesn't maintain that compact habit beyond a year or two. I don't have much experience with that, but it got me thinking about the recent so-called upgrade my cell phone made to its operating system. Now I can't find my photos from last Christmas, and my ringtone is locked in as something called UNITY by Queen Latifah instead of God Save the Queen. Still, though, I mostly love an upgrade, even if I do have to pretend it's not my pocket that is playing a random rat song from the early 1990s in the grocery store. The embarrassment is worth the faster connection speeds.
I like that Peter embraced the whole concept of upgrades. I mean, Peter's a solid classic guy. I was worried that he'd be, cheering on the classics over the upgrades, but he definitely likes an upgrade, apparently.
Who doesn't like an upgrade?
Maybe our expert doesn't like an upgrade. I don't know. Let's see what he has to say.
Hello, I'm Irvin Etienne, Curator of Herbaceous Plants and Seasonal Garden Design at the Garden at Newfields. I'm here to share a few updated classics with you all. All the plants I talk about, I'm either growing currently or I have grown in the past. So everything is based on real life experience, not catalog descriptions. So let's go. My first, the classic, is Nafolfia Flamenco, and my update is Nafolfia Mango Popsicle. Mango Popsicle will be hardy in zone 6 to 9, probably 18 inches tall and wide as far as the foliage clump is concerned, but your flower will be 2 to 3 feet tall, so it really shows up nicely above the foliage. The update here is the bloom time. This plant will bloom from June to October easily. I still have 1 or 2 in bloom now. So the update is definitely the length of flowering, and I think probably the color as well. Just a beautiful, beautiful mango color. For those of you that think orange is harsh, this is a much softer color and works in most any color scheme, especially with blues and purples. Again, the updated is Nafolfia Mango Popsicle. My next classic is Hibiscus Fireball, and the updated version is Hibiscus Holy Grail, hardy in zone 4 to 9. Holy Grail wants full sun, average soil. It'll even tolerate soil that's a little bit on the wet side because it carries Hibiscus mosquito's blood in it. The updates come in multiple areas. Foliage. Holy Grail has incredible black foliage as opposed to the normal green of Fireball. It also has better form. I love Fireball, but it tends to lean or fall over even. Holy Grail stays nice and upright, truly a shrub that holds its presence. The next thing is the flower power. Holy Grail blooms and blooms and blooms. I still have blooms on my plants. It just simply produces more flowers over a longer period of time. It's really beautiful because you've got that black foliage with these big 8 to 9 inch blooms. It's a really great contrast between the black foliage and the red flower. Again, my updated version is Hibiscus Holy Grail. Next is Agapanthus, the classic being Agapanthus Storm Cloud. The updated version, Agapanthus Galaxy Blue, hardy in zone 6 to 10. It'll be about 2 to 3 feet in flower, foliage maybe 15 inches tall. Clumps can get to 2 feet or more across in time. I'm really anxious to see that development. You want them in full sun and ideally good drainage, especially in winter. Now, the update here, zone 6, an Agapanthus, or Blue Nile lily if you like, Agapanthus, hardy to zone 6. That is new for us. I would say that I would mulch the first year or two to help it get established, but all the same, definitely worth trying. It's not very often we get new blue flowers for the garden. Agapanthus Galaxy Blue also blooms for months, so you got lots of color all summer long, and hardy to zone 6. You're going to love this one. By all means, try it. My next plant is a shrub, the classic being Buddleia Black Knight, the updated version Buddleia Grand Cascade, hardy in zone 5 to 10. Grand Cascade to get 5 to 6 feet tall, 7 to 8 feet wide. Now you do want full sun like all the other Buddleias or butterfly bushes, and good drainage. I point out immediately that there's a lot of variation in flower color between these two. My classic Black Knight has very dark flowers, dark purple flowers. Grand Cascade has lavender flowers. So once we get that out of the way, we can look at the other things. One being flower size. Grand Cascade has flowers over 1 foot long. I had one last year that was close to 2 feet long. 4 inches across. The clusters can be 4 inches across. Incredible flower power. They're still blooming. Form. It has this beautiful, graceful form because the flowers cascade, as the name suggests, cascade. So it has this wonderful weeping effect to it. Most of the Buddleias have gotten dinged for seeding around, the classics I mean. Breeding has solved a lot of that. And Grand Cascade, I've had it for 3 years. I've not had a single seedling yet. So it sounds to me like this is going to be one with few or no seeds. Again, my updated one is Buddleia Grand Cascade. Absolutely gorgeous in flower and form. Highly recommend that plant. My final plant is a small tree. The classic Albizia julibrisson or silk tree. The update, Albizia julibrisson summer chocolate. Hardy in zone 6 to 9, same as the straight species. Summer chocolate will get 15 to 20 feet tall and wide. You want it in full sun. It'll tolerate a wide range of soils. Now it is only hardy to zone 6, so there is a limit in how many people can grow it, I'm sure. But the big improvement here is the foliage color. Summer chocolate, as the name suggests, has chocolate foliage. It's absolutely gorgeous. This lacy chocolate umbrella-shaped plant almost. It's just gorgeous in the landscape. Gives a very tropical feel. Wonderful, wonderful texture in addition to the color. It also flowers, a pink flower, kind of pom-pom shape, but you're really growing this for the foliage. Now, it is only hardy to zone 6, so if we have a really harsh winter, it can get killed back. If that happens, you want to watch the new growth because it's a grafted plant. Your new growth could come from the rootstock and remain green, or it can come from the graft and be chocolate. The chocolate foliage starts out green, so you got to give it a little time. When that new growth starts, give it at least 2 weeks, maybe longer, until you know for sure what parts are chocolate, what parts are green. The green parts you cut out. In general, even if we have a mild winter, feel free to cut it back, to shape it, to keep the size down, whatever you want to do. Now, Albizia is known as an invasive in some areas, but way up here in the Midwest, it's not a serious problem at all. I don't expect any seedlings from my chocolate whatsoever. But again, I'm in zone 6, so I'm at its upper limit, so respect that. Again, Albizia summer chocolate, gorgeous tropical plant in appearance, but a hardy plant in reality. I hope you enjoy a few of these in your garden. Whatever you do, please have fun. Thank you.
Carol, I loved that. That Irvin, he sounds like a hoot.
He's great. I would listen to him talk about plants all day, any day.
Right? He could talk about the phone book for all I care. He's great.
Make the most of your time in the garden every day with a Fine Gardening magazine subscription. This holiday season, we're running special discounts you won't want to miss. Go to finegardening.com and click subscribe to claim your holiday savings. Gardeners know best. There's always more to be done, more to learn, and more to enjoy once everything is blooming. Keep your green thumbs growing with the best of Fine Gardening archives, special interest books, and more. Plus, check out today's deal at tautenstore.com and save 30% in the Taunton store with code PODCAST.